Welcome to this week's Cattle Call. I'm Susan Littlefield on the Rural Radio Network. If you remember last time Brad Kooima and I were talking 2012, 2013. What does that mean as we go into 23? Surprisingly, a lot of folks are talking about that. And the talk of retaining heifers, cash market this week that has nothing to write home about. It's kind of disappointing in many ways. But the big question is the South going to be the support factor? We're going to get all those details and more on this week's trade with Brad Kooima. Brad, of course, with Kooima Varilek out of Sioux Center, Iowa. So obviously 2012-13, we talked about that the last time you and I were on this program together. And a lot of folks are kind of agreeing with what you had to say and saying, you're right. And I said that. Brad is right. As we look at 13 and the warm up and the greener pastures we got, many feel we could see a repeat in 23.
Well, thank you for
You're
those
welcome.
kind words. But yeah, there's probably a bunch of people out there that they're saying, well, yeah, the only reason that Brad talks about 12 and 13 because he doesn't know anything about today, right? Some days you feel like that as an analyst or as a broker, where it doesn't always make sense on a day-to-day basis. But my experience, to comment, to react to your comment, my experience is it's helpful to me if I try to put the market in a lot broader context of not necessarily trying to think of what's going to happen today or tomorrow, but think of, so what is the overall fundamental situation that makes me have an opinion for what might happen in 3 months or 6 months or sometime in the next 12 months. And so, yeah, it was kind of fun to draw the parallels last week with, to me, striking similarities. 2022 was a record cow slaughter. That's last year. Beat the 2011 record. 2022 had the highest percentage of heifers as a percentage of steers ever. And that's really where, from a supply sider standpoint, that's where the whole rub of the green is, Susan, that when you flip to having to feed every heifer, well, most of the heifers, to where they get enough moisture and enough confidence back in the market that they say, you know what, we got to rebuild this herd that we've just crucified the last 3 years with cow slaughter, and we got to save those heifers. Well, that's when they don't go to the feedlot. That's that 2014 like supply side phenomenon. So, I'm not the only one watching something like this, I don't think. I mean, anybody that's cut their teeth on fundamentals would be thinking the same thing. So, yeah, is that bullish today, or yesterday? Market didn't act like it then, but I mean, I've taken a little bit of a long view. To me, the supply side situation is it's cut in stone. There's no going back. I mean, we're going to have less cattle. Now, just so barring something weird, like a black swan again, that I hope that somebody shoots that black swan that keeps laying eggs. So hopefully not for a long time.
No kidding. So can we say maybe the tide has turned a little bit for this heifer retention, and guys are a little bit more confident as we go into the spring?
There's some regional differences, but yes, I'm going to answer, a short answer, but I can't give a short answer. There's some, I was visiting with a gentleman yesterday from Garden City, Kansas. He told me he had 4.5 inches of rain last year. It's like, clearly there's no thought of having anything, in that part of the world to graze. But now, conversely, you get across the tier of the north, which is maybe a little more traditional, the cow-calf country anyway. Visiting with somebody out of Montana today, and this was a big player. He made the statement to me that he says, I'm not going to sell any heifer calves this spring. Hopefully he's going to try to save them all. So you get into the Dakotas, a lot of Montana, quite a bit of Colorado. I mean, these mountain states with all the snow and stuff like that, these guys are optimistic that their ponds are going to be full and the grass is going to be green. And so as we move towards, the next 4 or 5 months, it should be fun. I wonder if the USDA is going to, give us a glimpse into the future or not. On the end of January, you get a semi-annual 6-month inventory report, which I get a bang out of those reports. Very few others do, but we'll see what they do with that beef, that heifer replacement number, and then that overall cow number too. So,
all right, since you brought it up, we're going to talk about it yet on this program. Let's talk about it. We got a couple big reports coming out, but let's jump to the end of the month, a report that you kind of look forward to every January.
I do, because yeah, like I outlined earlier, I think that it's beneficial to think with a bit of a long view, and those kind of numbers, of course, give you a little bit of a window into that perspective. So I doubt that they're going to tip their hand very much on the beef replacement thing this time, but it'd be interesting to see the heifer beef replacement. But of course, you got a total number of cows, you got all cattle and calves, you got steers under 500 pounds, you got bull. I mean, this report has got a lot of numbers on it. So I will be very anxious to see what the all beef cow number does. There's talk that you're going to take this down by the millions, and we'll see. Generally, you think about it, to change 100 million head, 1% is that's 90 some million all cow. It takes a lot, so but there's talk about dropping this cow number by 1 or 2 or 3, and I wouldn't at all be surprised. It's almost inevitable. I mean, the way the kind of kill we've had, how can it not be a lot less? So anxious to see it.
Could we see any surprises in the cattle on feed report on Friday?
That's the one that everybody seems to care more about often, which I kind of go like, well, geez, we get one of these every month, whatever, I mean, and last time I checked, most cows have 1 calf. And so if we can figure out how many cows we had, we should be able to extrapolate how many cattle you're going to have. But anyway, chasing that for 42 and a half years yet, trying to figure that one out. So big placements, you remember last summer and fall, drought, right? No place to graze. All the heifers came. That was our story every Wednesday. And, placements are big, but they're light because there's no place to grass. There's no wheat pasture, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now this is going to be the 3rd month. And this is the month where it looks to a lot of analysts like this is one where they really take a swing at the placement number. And that I think it could be down 10%. Average trade guess is not quite like that, but, at some point, all of a sudden you get enough news where you get the markets, finally you get its attention, right? And you go like, holy crap, there's a lot less cattle. And you're like, yeah, no kidding. We've been talking about this, so I'm anxious to come to Friday. I'll probably be let down and it won't be quite as, brammy as I think it maybe could be. But that would be the surprise that I would see. We're going to have less cattle on feed too, after chasing that more numbers of cattle on feed because we're feeding lighter cattle a longer period of time. So they stayed on feed longer. You've tipped that camshaft over now too, where we've got a lot less cattle on feed too. So yeah, decent supply side news. People are going to probably say, well, how come the market isn't a little bit better? But again, it's sometimes easier to take a long view and hard for me to explain maybe a daily deal, although I could probably try to give you an idea. I think the North especially is going to get bombarded again by, for some of us, our 3rd or 4th or 5th snowstorm. You're starting to lose track, and we're sick of it. We want these cattle dead. That's it. We've moved them to the liability column, right? I mean, we've mentally given up on those things ever being any good. Being a little bit exaggerated, but not really. And so you've got a very motivated seller, and almost to the point of, I don't care, just get them dead, And so that kind of an environment, it's pretty hard to get any stronger cash. At least in the North, but maybe, like you hinted at the beginning of our interview, maybe we could actually get some help from our friends down South for a change.
That's something we don't talk about very often. South being the supportive factor.
No, you're right. But that's for sure. I couldn't help but notice though, the show list, particularly in Texas, and this is anecdotal, but from visiting with folks down there, there is a lot of empty pens, and it's a function of, people say to me, Susan, so gosh, we're paying $7.50 for corn, right? How do those guys? Because they're paying like another $1. How does that work? It doesn't work. So that's why they've got empty pens. So maybe they're tight enough down there on supply that maybe they can actually lead the way a little bit this week.
Well, lots of great things that we looked at. We're 2 weeks away from the NCBA. I just want to make sure I had the dates right. 2 weeks away from the NCBA convention. I'm sure there'll be a lot of cattle talk in the hallways and around the water coolers there. Look forward to talking to you next week.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll be down there. There won't be the fireworks quite like the last 2 years, but I'll be sure to keep the shocker lit, right?
All right, sounds good. Brad Kooima has been joining us this week, and as we always remind folks, commodity futures and options involve a substantial risk of loss not suitable to all investors. And that's this week's Cattle Call on the Rural Radio Network.